It is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It's time to continue my discussion on the forgotten collectible card games of old. Card games that have lost a lot of support by their company, might not be produced anymore, and many people don't play them as much. We were talking about the third collectible card game ever released, Vampire: The Eternal Struggle. Now, as I was talking about, I was diving into the minion phase, the most important phase you're talking about, and we were talking about combat. Let's talk more about combat. Now, the first thing you're going to do in combat is, of course, as we were talking about, choose a strike. Now, the strike you're going to be choosing will either be one provided by a combat card you've played, maybe a piece of equipment you have has a strike on it. A minion itself sometimes has a strike listed on it, or some other cards occasionally grant strikes to minions that it might be associated with that card. If you had used a card that granted a maneuver, that one's strike must be used. That is the first one you choose. If you have additional strikes, that is when you can choose other cards, other effects, and if they have maneuvers associated with them, if you didn't use those maneuvers, you don't need to have like a specific one you're using then. Basically, you don't have to have used the maneuvers in order to use that card. But if you did use a maneuver with a certain card in play or one you played from your hand, that's the strike you're using primarily. Others for other pairs of strikes, done. Now we're resolving the strikes. Both strikes resolve simultaneously against each other. They clash in together. The thing is, you're going to have to consider the range. Most strikes are effective only at close range. If it would say it's ranged or list R with the type of damage, then those are the ones that are effective pretty much at any range. You could have them effective at close or long. If it doesn't list either of those two, you're going to assume it's only one that's effective at close range. And those are the majority of the strikes. Now, when your minion takes damage, in this case it would be from a strike, but it could technically be from any source. They would either lose blood or life, appropriate to the type of minion they have. Now, if a strike would have some kind of special ability connected to it, that ability resolves before any damage from said strike applies. There are many special strikes in which timing is the key, so it's important to resolve these special abilities first, then the damage. And of course, both strikes are happening simultaneously. Special abilities happen simultaneously. Damage happens simultaneously. Now, at the end of this, if either side should be such in a position they would no longer be readied from damage or effect, then the combat cannot continue. And this means either one or both of the minions would be no longer ready. Then you couldn't continue combat, even if the other side wanted to press it into more rounds. They both still have to be ready for combat to continue. Now, this can occur at any time during combat, not just strike resolution. There you go. That's an important thing. As soon as one of the minions is no longer ready from damage or other effects, combat can't continue. Simple as that. Now, there are some cards which do allow you to use additional strikes, as I was talking about during a round of combat. These additional strikes are effectively announced. You basically play the effective card, and then they get their own sort of phase within here in which the strikes are then played and associated with this. So you have the first pair of strikes battle against each other from the minions. Then if the minions should have an additional pair, then the acting minion first gets to choose if they want to use their additional strikes. So then the first pair is of course resolved. Then the acting minion chooses if they want to get additional strikes. Then the other minion chooses if they want to get additional strikes. Then it was effectively the exact same as before of choosing an appropriate strike from their hand, from their effective in play, using its ability, resolving it just like we did before. Though, like I mentioned last week, if this folk here gets an additional strike and this one does not, it's a pair with this guy over here empty. Or if this one has the strike and this one doesn't, this is an empty part of the pair. They're technically part of the pair, but not doing anything. And this again continues with choosing your strike, resolving them, and repeating as necessary as many additional strikes have been gained. All this is going to take place at the original range. So range is not changing. You're not using any more maneuvers. Range is going to stay the same. This could be a point in time when you're choosing the strikes here, you could apply additional strikes. It is important to note that only one card or effect can be used on a minion per combat phase, per combat round, to grant them additional strikes. So when you are granting your minion additional strikes, whatever card or effect it is will determine how many that will be, and that's the only one you're playing on it for that round of combat. You can use other cards and effects that grant additional strikes later on, but right now, only that one. Now, at the end of this combat turn, each minion can choose to either press the attack to continue battling, or they can choose to go their separate ways to end combat. Now, the fact is, this is a press, which, starting with, of course, the acting minion, you find out if they want to press it. They basically choose to use their press to either continue the battle or to cancel the opponent's press if they want to end the battle. This is very similar to the maneuverability is getting between close and range, that you're using presses and basically canceling presses to see if the battle continues or the battle ends. So if, let's say, the acting minion wants to press it, they would send a press. If the other minion wants to end it, they would use a press to cancel out that first one, or they would accept it and go into combat. If the acting minion doesn't want to do anything, they would not play a press. The other one might play a press to continue attacking the acting minion. Then you'd play a press to cancel it, etc., so forth. You see how it works. It's just like determining close and long range when it came to initially when we're discussing your strikes. Press is just the same. Minions continue going back and forth playing pressed cards until one side can no longer play any, and then any uncancelled press cards means that combat continues and you begin another round of fighting. You've basically moved on to that next round of combat. There you go. And that's it for today. I talked more about combat for your minions. This is, of course, very complex. The minion phase is very complex, and combat is pretty difficult. So that's why I'm kind of going over it a little bit in each episode. For this one, we talked about strikes, resolving them, and pressing. The strikes themselves are effectively, you choose one, your opponent chooses one, you pair off with them. Their effect happens simultaneously. Any damage, any special effects. Special effects happen before damage. Then, if you have multiple strikes, a new round of strikes. Basically, then each side chooses to add in multiple strikes in the same round. Then they resolve just like the normal strikes, and you keep going until both sides run out of additional strikes. If there is a pair that has one side with a strike and one side with not, then of course only the one side's acting and it's pretending like the other side has a pair. You're pretending. After all this is said and done, of course, then, just like when we were talking about range last week, you can use, and using maneuvers to manipulate it, you can use presses to manipulate whether combat continues or ends, to your choice. The more presses you have, the more attempts you can either to continue fighting or to cancel out your opponent's ability to continue fighting if you want to end it. And of course, if at any time during this entire thing your minion is no longer ready, no longer can do anything, it's out. This is important to note that, of course, the acting minion in the first place would be tapped from this, and after this entire resolution of everything, that's when they're no longer unready for that. Unless you have something else that makes it unready as part of that. Tapping doesn't always make a difference here. In the next episode, we're going to talk about strike effects and damage resolution, the two remaining large components to combat. We're going to try to finish up combat next time. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's for the channel, the Empire is working in. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.